If I was running Eskom, I would make sure there's no 80 billion rand a year of fruitless and wasteful expenditure.
Okay.
I know exactly where to start to stop it. And I'm saying, I'm challenging the management of Eskom right now. Please do that. And I would make sure that Eskom does not burn 1 liter in diesel. I would make sure that Eskom does not put in 1 kilowatt hour of any intermittent energy on the grid. It is a tragedy that South Africa has got great contempt for skill. Those of us who are skilled, who are experienced, who are subject matter experts, we are never deployed to full use for the benefit of the people of this country.
King David Studio Podcast.
We're recording this on a holiday, so that shows the commitment that we have. It's afternoon of a Women's Day today, and I managed to get a hold of Ntate Tshepo Kgadima, really just to share with us nuggets of information related to a problem you and I deal with every day, and that's the price of electricity. It's become a burden. It's become something we only talk about, we tweet about, we post about, but I'm not sure we're doing enough as South Africans to face it head on. And I wonder if there's a messiah that's looking out for us in the political space. I gave him such a high accolade by calling him messiah. I wonder if I'm even correct. We have Ntate Tshepo Kgadima. I hope you're well today.
I'm good. This is a special day, Women's Day. Today we are talking, and it also reminds me of this exact day in the year 2011, where there was a corporate coup staged at my office then. And by what one would call the political aristocracy of this country, where they effectively wanted to hijack a company and destroy the company that was employing hundreds of people and already was going to be contributing to the economy of this country in the area of mining. So the 9th of August always, takes me back to that day, apart from the fact that I think as a country we're not doing enough in terms of women emancipation and women being really, being to the fore in terms of leading. Yes, we in Women's Month, but it appears that immediately at the end of Women's Month, everything goes back to normal, and that is a challenge. But all the same, it is good to be with you. Again. I think it's been a while since we've been together.
Yes, almost
so I
2 years.
appreciate this moment. Yes, I appreciate this moment.
It was an interesting one we did last time. It was a masterclass. A lot of people regard it as a masterclass of how electricity works, and some of them said you're one of those proponents of doomsday that may never happen. Because remember, we spoke about what are the possibilities. And I remember you said a complete shutdown is a possibility.
Yes,
when you reflect, what do you say now to what seems like a load shedding could be a thing of the past? When you reflect to their perspective at that time, what do you have to say?
Look, in the first instance, there is a saying that repetition is the mother of learning. So we are repeating some of the things that I think we have spoken about even then. And that makes it the father of action, repetition, that is. And that makes it the architect of accomplishment. So we hope that as we repeat these things, we'll be able to accomplish certain desirable, positive outcomes for this nation. For quite a long time, I asserted that load shedding could be ended within 90 days. I asserted that load shedding was not necessary. I asserted that everything that was being done was actually leading us to a calamity unseen before. And when you and I spoke in that masterclass, at that time, I did warn that indeed we were at a precipice that the grid of the country could collapse. And indeed, it was very serious. Now, if you want to know whether or not what I said and what I had been asserting for 6 months prior to that period was taken seriously, just look at what corporate South Africa then did. If you look at the JSE, for example, they went and stored up enough water as well as fuel, diesel fuel, to be able to run for 9 days.
Wow.
Because when the grid collapses, the financial system of this country would have collapsed with load shedding.
You spoke about that.
Yes,
Yes.
I spoke about that. And they went ahead and started to make provisions. If you look at the hospitals, I mean, one of the private hospitals here, they had enough for their staff as well as the families of their staff to be in one place in the event. So it means that they took it serious. The American embassy, no less, issued a advisory and a warning to all Americans, including American companies, that indeed, from what people like myself were saying as subject matter experts, that in fact they found it to be true, and that, yes, I think alternative measures would be done. But most importantly, as of the 1st of April 2023, the insurance companies excluded from your insurance cover any great collapse related claims.
Wow.
So that means that it was no joke.
For example,
So
consumer-based reality.
any insurance claim, because we spoke about all the problems associated, I think all the calamities associated with the great collapse, and that in the case of South Africa, it would take no less than 21 days to bring the grid back up, and that we didn't have enough resources, alternative, to be able to keep the economy going for no more than 3 days. That is still the case, by the way. But then the insurance companies took heed of what I was saying, and they then wrote into, following our airing of that masterclass, they then came out and said, if the grid collapses, we will not honor any claims that are associated with the great collapse. So they took it very serious. And quite a number of other, I think, institutions, corporates, they took that very serious. But that, I think, was helpful. Repeating that warning was helpful because it brought about the necessary pressure. Yeah. We saw on the political side, some of the political parties that I had advised that, in fact, I also asserted that electricity was a constitutional right. It is not explicitly stated in the Constitution that it is a right, as is the right to water, to housing, but electricity itself. In fact, there are 13 rights under the Constitution, Chapter 2 rights, that are dependent on reliable, least cost availability of electricity. Yeah. And therefore, if you don't have electricity, your constitutional rights, and no less than on 13 accounts, are infringed upon.
I want to talk about the least cost manner. I want to simplify them to the layman who's paying a lot of money to just switch on the light, switch on the kettle, and have a normal life. And their lives have changed completely, particularly in the past 6 months or so, with what seems like a lot of effort from NERSA to, and I'll say from Eskom, really, a campaign to have the price be high.
Yes, yes.
And I want to talk about really what makes the price of electricity high in South Africa? Simple question.
You are paying for the thieving that is happening at Eskom, rampant looting.
Yeah.
So what am I saying? The cost of generating electricity, transmitting it, distributing it, with the personnel, with the 40,000 plus employees that Eskom has.
Should be how much?
And having maintenance, that happens. The cost, overall in cost, is 86 cents.
Per kilowatt hour?
Yes.
Right now we're paying 4 rands.
We're paying, it depends on who you are. If you are a postpaid customer, meaning you pay after, you could pay anything from 3 rand 40 to over 4 rand. And others are paying maybe 2 rand. It depends on how many units. You see, also is an absurdity, by the way, that if you use 350 or less kilowatt hours a month, but you're only drawing 20 amps. 20 amps is 2,400 watts. How many houses actually use that? But let's say, give it for that, these guys, they know what's happening, even though I think that they don't. And I'm saying that because I've done some work in a court matter looking at how they were running some of their processes, and I was not surprised that they ended up backing out of that court action and settling the matter. That is Eskom. So if you're using 20 amps and you use below 350 kilowatt hours, your tariff will be, I think, 2.18 rand, including VAT.
Slightly cheaper.
Slightly cheaper. If you are using 60 amps and you're drawing less than 600 kilowatt hours a month, you then pay less.
Why
it's
the
2.47 cents a kilowatt hour. If you are using, and this is, by the way, is hypothetical because it doesn't happen in real life, but this is what they stated as agreed or approved by NERSA. If you are drawing more than 600, so, businesses and all of that, you draw more than 600 kilowatt hours a month. You then pay 3.94 cents or 3.98 cents a kilowatt hour. Because the VAT, then obviously you claim it back. Most invariably will be a VAT vendor. So you won't pay the 4.54. But if you are a household, an individual, and you're using above 600 or you are deemed
to be using.
You are deemed.
So that means somebody has to speculate.
It's guesswork, yeah.
Yeah.
You are deemed to have used more than 600 kilowatt hours. You then pay 4.54 cents a kilowatt hour. And then there are other costs, additional costs and everything. So maybe let me put it this way. And maybe, viewers in South Africa might know, might not know, but it's immaterial. But the example is very pertinent to what we are discussing. In that, in the year 1968, there were friends sitting in a bar and they drew on a napkin a triangle to start an airline.
Okay.
Then, that's in the United States, in Texas. They spent the next 4 years in court, taken to court by the American Airlines, Continental Airlines, and everybody else. Their lawyer, who then was later appointed chairman and CEO, is a famous corporate titan executive, Eb Kelleher. Eb Kelleher took Southwest Airlines to the skies in 1972, and then in 73, they became profitable. For as long as Eb Kelleher was presiding and the CEO was in charge of Southwest Airlines, it made a profit, whether it was the Iran crisis, whether it was the 2000, the 9/11, so-called the bombing on the
2008,
the big crash in 2008, and doesn't matter. Southwest Airlines was the most profitable and the most efficient. There's some of the things that we did, which we can draw lessons from. So when they took to the skies, they were supposed to have had 4 aircraft. They only had 3. There was a problem with the 4th aircraft. So they had to run a 4 aircraft routes with only 3. So one of the things that they came up with, the director of flight operations said that when the aircraft lands, it must land, taxi, we must disembark, we must clean the aircraft, we must change the oil, we must then have the passengers on board. He gave a ridiculous time of like 15 minutes. Everybody said, it has never been done.
Impossible.
He said, no, if you don't do it, I'm going to fire you and get somebody who can do it. If they can't do it, I'm going to fire them until I find somebody who can do it. And guess what? Nobody was ever fired. But one of the things that they did was the standardization of airfare, the price you pay for the ticket.
It's the same.
And the standardization of service. They stuck to the knitting. They never expanded themselves. That's why today, Southwest Airlines doesn't go to Europe, it doesn't go to Canada, it doesn't go to Africa, it doesn't go to Asia. They stuck to the knitting. because they understood. So if you are a Eskom, stick to the knitting. Understand what is it that you are dealing with and what is it that you are managing. And therefore, you can run at the least cost. So 87 cents a kilowatt hour. If you add 33% on that, I'm saying Eskom would still be profitable. Right now, their profit margin, what is called earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization, that margin is 14% as per their last audited financial statements. I am making an assertion that drop the electricity tariffs, don't increase. Please abandon course in as far as going before NERSA and applying for an electricity tariff. And maybe this calls for South Africans, everybody now must be vigilant and oppose Eskom's 36% tariff increase that is planned before to be applied for before NERSA. All South Africans of all walks of life, this must be the rolling mass action to stop Eskom from increasing electricity tariffs, and a demand must be made that if the current board of Eskom and the management of Eskom cannot drop electricity tariffs to R1.16 a kilowatt hour, please leave your post. Let those who can bring the electricity tariff to R1.16 be the people that then run Eskom and not you, because you are therefore demonstrating not only ineptitude, but just the lack of gumption on running a utility that you're supposed to be so well aware of. So that's really what I'm saying, that we have to draw lessons from what Eb Kelleher did, standardization. So standardize the tariff. You can't have a situation whereby a smelter, an aluminium smelter company, is paying 19 cents a kilowatt hour when the cost of producing electricity from coal is 46 cents. In fact, if Eskom was to do what I'm saying they must do, their cost of producing electricity from coal will drop to 32 cents. The cost of nuclear will be around 11 cents, will not go to 14 cents, will be at 11 cents a kilowatt hour. And therefore, that is your solution. And therefore, bring down the tariffs to R1.16. At R1.16 a kilowatt hour, you will sell more electricity.
Because you'll increase demand.
Of course, the demand will increase. We will see investment into the energy-intensive industries, whether it's the fourth industrial revolution economies, whether it's data centers, whether it's cryptocurrencies, or any of those that are so energy-intensive. Or smelters. To process the 47 trillion rand worth of minerals that are underground and will remain trapped for as long as electricity is high as it is. And also to ensure that on the agricultural front, how can you have a country that is importing fruit to make jam?
And chicken.
That is importing chicken. That is importing beef. Yeah. It is unforgivable. But when you look at during the load shedding crisis, that most of the farmers, they lost billions. The retailers lost billions. Today, for them to stay in business, they are continuing to lose billions because the cost is so much higher, which they are passing on to the consumer. So the South African consumer has got far less disposable income. Therefore, the South African consumer now, they must do the needful. Simply abandon Eskom. Go off grid. At least what we can congratulate and thank these politicians for what they did, inadvertently all the same, was to deregulate and liberalize the electricity generation market. So now that self-generation market is growing. So the future of electricity in South Africa out of circumstances is now a off-grid market, no longer a on-grid market. Hence, I'm questioning even the wisdom of saying we are going to build 14,000 kilometers of, because the grid of this country, by the way, the most complex and the most robust electricity transmission grid globally is sufficient to transport no less than 55,000 megawatts of electricity. Today, if Eskom can sell consistently, on average, they are not able to sell more than 25,000, maybe 26,000 megawatts of electricity. Compare that to 8 years ago when they could sell 34,000 megawatts of electricity. So, and that figure, by the way, is on the increase, meaning that they're going to sell even less. They will consistently, they can have 35,000 megawatts of energy availability factor, because energy availability factor does not mean generated electricity. It just means that the assets that you have, that is the potential electricity you can draw from those assets. Of course, but the demand is declining.
It's like
even
a plug.
further.
It's like a plug.
Yes.
It's ready to be used.
Absolutely.
If it's not used, it's just potential.
100%.
Yeah.
So therefore, you can't be wax lyrical. Oh, I've reached energy availability factor of this X. Of course, Eskom must run. This is what I say. It must run at 85% energy availability factor. It must run only on base load power because its core assets are the grid, and it should not cannibalize on itself by going also to be a player in the off-grid market, but it must therefore drop the tariffs and not want to cannibalize on its business, because either way, it just won't work. So drop the tariffs so that then you are able to create a buffer for this economy, ensure that the constitutional rights of citizens are no longer infringed upon, including the right to life. Should you find yourself in a situation where you need life-saving machine in a hospital, that cannot be without electricity for 20 seconds.
It's a constitutional matter. It's a rights issue.
It's a right to life. So Eskom needs to be aware. By the way, they should, I'm surprised that they don't know this, because the Eskom Conversion Act of 2001 actually stipulates this. And that act and the provisions thereof have not been repealed. So I don't understand this whole brouhaha. And now to go and contrive this so-called National Transmission Company of South Africa, that the so-called independent power producers who are not independent, who are reliant on National Treasury to give them guarantees so that they can be in business, but the product that they purport to supply is 100% useless. Therefore, it constitutes fruitless and wasteful expenditure. The Eskom that runs can generate electricity. Instead of spending 46 cents a kilowatt hour, they're supposed to spend 32 cents. So those are some of the things. They must use no diesel at all. I think when you and I were talking a year and a half ago, it was, it was astonishing that they were spending 30 billion rand a year on electricity, and they saw nothing wrong.
On diesel.
Yeah, on diesel rather. They're spending 30 billion rand a year on diesel. And even at that time, I made an assertion that there was absolutely no need to use 1 liter of diesel to generate electricity. And that must stop if they stop all of those things. But if they don't, and I doubt that they will ever stop to do all of these things, I doubt very much so that Eskom management and the politicians will take corrective measures to ensure that the tariffs come down to 116 cents. Therefore, what I'm saying to South Africans from all walks of life, don't only just march and protest the tariff increases that Eskom is applying for, but also find alternatives, go off-grid. Because
isn't it costly for the average person to go off-grid?
No, it's not costly. It costs you less today
than buying
electricity from Eskom.
Yeah.
Today, the energy costs are so high that the alternatives are cheaper. The alternative is cheaper than Eskom. There is absolutely no reason today for any household, by the way, to be on Eskom power. Zero.
There's a number of things that you raised. I wanted to nitpick on the role of NERSA in the story. Isn't NERSA supposed to be on the side of the consumers? Let me understand their role.
Keyword is supposed.
That's why I asked.
Yeah.
Aren't they meant to be the one that are watching Eskom so Eskom doesn't get out of hand in terms of price and all of that, and the price of how much they pay for coal and so forth?
NERSA has failed the people of this country.
Is that the role? What is at the heart of it? What is the role of NERSA?
They were supposed to regulate and ensure that prices don't skyrocket to the extent that they have. They failed the
Which
people
price?
of
Is the price of
electricity.
Of what we use at the end?
Yes.
And also the price of coal, where Eskom buys coal?
No, they don't need to have a say in that. Eskom must say, with the tariff that I'm able to get, the cloth has been cut to my size, and my size is that I must produce electricity and transmit it and distribute it for no more than 87 cents a kilowatt hour. That's what
is NERSA playing its part?
No, they're not. They are failing the people of this country. And in all of this pain that people are feeling, NERSA has somewhat remained silent and escaped scrutiny. And even the politicians in parliament, I mean, it's shocking that you can have 400 members of parliament that have never once hauled NERSA, over the coals for its dereliction of duty in failing to regulate the electricity market. We should never have been here. As I say, in 2008, electricity tariffs were 40 cents. Today, we're supposed to be at 1 rand 16 cents. And that is a figure that we must be at, and would have a viable, profitable Eskom that in turn is able to grow beyond the borders of this country. Remember, there is an animal called the Southern Africa Power Pool Grid. So instead of Eskom talking about creating the National Transmission Company of South Africa and wanting to build 14,000 kilometers of rail track, I would have thought that the most responsible thing to do would have been understanding that now we have stabilized, the penny has dropped, and we have accepted that the most efficient manner to generate electricity is base load, which is coal and nuclear. We should therefore have been ensuring that our neighbors are the poorest. I mean, you look at a country like Zambia, for example, electricity penetration is 34%. You look at a country like Zimbabwe, the electricity penetration there is no more than 37%. Mozambique, we talk about getting electricity from Mozambique. Mozambique, this energy poor country, they don't have electricity. None of our neighbors have got electricity. Congo, you've got people telling about the Grand Inga Dam and that they have to spend $80 billion to build, that power plant, which is hydro-powered. But the country itself is energy poor. And as a result, the economy of Congo has not grown. The instability of that country, of that region as a whole, amongst other things that, when there's very little to go by, of course, then you end up with a very dysfunctional situation that they have there. But I would have thought that we should have taken the expertise that we have developed over the years, since 1923 as far as Eskom is concerned, but we started generating electricity since 1887. 1887.
In Kimberley.
Yeah. We should have used that expertise to then ensure that SADC, it is powered. We should have then abandoned the apartheid-era Nationalist Party policy of saying anything above 1,000 megawatts is strategic. We should never entrust it on the neighbors. We should have actually said, now that we have got this capacity, let us be neighborly. Let us ensure the development of our neighboring countries, at least within SADC, by ensuring that they too have got access to the cheapest electricity, and to do so would have been a very profitable and a economic diplomacy tool that would have averted most of the problems that we have to deal with, including the problem of
foreign nationals,
illegal foreign nationals for that matter, who are put in such conditions where life is unbearable. We should have been doing that. That's what Eskom actually should have been doing. If I was running Eskom, I would make sure there's no 80 billion rand a year of fruitless and wasteful expenditure.
Okay.
I know exactly where to start to stop it. And I'm challenging the management of Eskom right now. Please do that.
Yeah.
Cut off the 80 billion rand. If you don't know where to find it, well, maybe
they should call you.
You're the wrong person.
I have your numbers. They should call you.
Well, maybe they could call me, because other nations are calling me. I mean, you and I were talking before we started with this podcast that, my own people in the Botswana, they sought my input on what they can do
Also a Zambia issue.
on matters of energy. So, but why would I not get a call here? Anyway,
I like where you started. If you are running Eskom, carry on.
Yeah, so if I was running
Fruitful and
Eskom,
wasteful, fruitless and
80
wasteful.
billion rand, I'd cut it now.
Yeah.
In the first hour, I would get in.
You'd be Gaten McKenzie. In the first hour, you publish the names.
And then I would be.
You get what I mean.
Yeah.
You start with energy.
I would do it with the precision of a surgeon's knife. I would also ensure that we have a Eskom that can generate 85% from its assets, baseload assets. And I would make sure that Eskom does not burn 1 liter in diesel. I would make sure that Eskom does not put in 1 kilowatt hour of any intermittent energy on the grid. And I would make sure that the 40,000 people that are on the payroll in the main, but largely they are unemployed, they are put to work so that we get to a point whereby within 1 year, the electricity consumption per capita gets to 3.8 megawatt hours. And I would then put in place a plan that ensures that in South Africa, we get the electricity consumption per capita per year to 5.5 megawatt hours in the next 3 years. And then also I would make sure that we make the necessary investment in economic infrastructure of expanding the grid within SADC, the so-called Southern Africa Power Pool grid. So I would call on the president to call his colleagues, his counterparts, to sit in a room and hammer out a accord, an agreement on this, that this is a non-negotiable, because our people deserve better. And then say, as South Africa, using our own utility here, we are able then to make that meaningful, positive contribution that has got long-lasting, impactful results, and ensure that SADC itself, which the region itself is endowed with mineral resources, is endowed with natural resources in the area of agriculture, land, for example, and water. They have no shortage. And ensure that these economies are no longer dependent on imports. And electricity is a very potent instrument to be able to achieve that. It's a very much needed tonic to get these economies to grow. And then I would make sure that I run a Eskom whereby in 2024, the electricity tariffs are dropped. And I would make sure that in this country, Parliament would have to make all the necessary legislative and even constitutional amendments to remove the middleman. Municipalities have got zero business in distributing electricity to anybody.
Do they cause the increase of price? Are they at the heart of it?
They are part of it. I mean, it's not surprising that now the so-called municipal debt is sitting at 68 billion rand. Now, Eskom has to, in the next few weeks, has to report on its financials for the year ended March 2024. And I'm saying that if you apply the rules as they're supposed to be applied, particularly the International Financial Reporting Standards provisions, the audit standards, Eskom will have to write off 58 billion rand of the so-called municipal debt.
And yet consumers paid?
No, they don't.
Well, give it a second and say, here's a consumer who used power and they paid for it.
Yes.
They paid electricity. They expect to receive it, but yet their municipality didn't pay their supplier, which is Eskom.
Yes, because the municipality itself, has got all manner of complaints, but...
Or they use money for other things.
Listen, Eskom, I would run Eskom as the only provider.
Mm-hmm. where all of us buy from one place.
Well, it'll be the cheapest. There will be no incentive for you to put a solar panel on your roof. There will be no incentive for you to do anything else. They'll just make sense that because it made sense at one point in time. Even during apartheid South Africa, it made sense. Look at the appliances in our homes. The appliances in our homes, which means that therefore our buying patterns, the way we structured this economy, we structured it on the assumption of a well-founded assumption for that matter, because Eskom does have capacity to supply electricity to every single human being in this country. So that assumption was not unfounded, that the appliances that we buy, the machinery that we use in our businesses, all of it is electric. And that was a well-founded assumption. So why then go and create that confusion? I mean, Eskom, Dr. Hendrik van der Bijl designed Eskom to be a force for good in the economy, and it was a force for good. In fact, it's not surprising that this is the most developed in all of the African continent. This economy is the most developed. The tragic thing is that the developments were a legacy of both the Progressive Party and the Nationalist Party.
What led to municipalities playing a role in the distribution of power? What was the reason for that, and how did it become what it became?
No, I think the legislation, I mean, you look, in any environment, you always have the greedy, profiteering privateers who would lobby and bribe the politicians to pass a legislation that gives them a seat at the table at the expense of the interests of ordinary people. And because the municipalities themselves have since had to go out on tender, and they're being provided all manner of services that should have been a competence of the municipality. And in areas whereby, I mean, you have a situation whereby you can buy electricity not from a Eskom itself, but you have to buy it from a vendor who charges you a fee for
administration,
for just giving you a token to say that you bought electricity from the municipality, who in turn also bought it from Eskom. I mean, it's insane. And the municipalities, they themselves are no players in the off-grid electricity generation market. I mean, just it's an absurdity. It's astounding. And they do. I mean, Salga, for example, we expect better out of Salga. We expect better out of NERSA. We expect better out of Parliament to have been the ones that really took proper and appropriate measures to ensure that we are not energy poor, and at the same time that we have electricities within reach and is not impoverishing people financially, and at the same time that the economy is able to grow, because remember, now we live in the so-called global village. So if you can produce a product, how is it that China can buy coal from us, from the Russians, from the Colombians, and from themselves, they bring it inland through the south, and manufacture, fabricate products and engineer and do everything else, and do it at the least cost than everybody else. The Japanese did the same thing. The Indians are doing the same thing. South Africa, there's no excuse for us to actually not be at the cutting edge, to be leaders in the space of, there is absolutely no excuse, except, here is the reason why. Now it is a tragedy that South Africa has got great contempt for skill. Those of us who are skilled, who are experienced, who are subject matter experts, we are never deployed to full use for the benefit of the people of this country.
Why is that?
It appears that we are reliving that moment when Jesus Christ said to his disciples that, no, this demon, it needs prayer and fasting. It's a serious demon. It is a serious demon in this country that we've got absolute contempt for skill. Those among us who are the things that I'm discussing with you, I've been saying them for many, many years. I've written extensively on many, many subjects. If only the things that I'm saying had been embraced, just as, some of the provinces in China, in India, they are embracing those things and their economies are, if they had been embraced in my home country of South Africa, we would have been better off. This economy would have been growing. We would never have been having the problems that we're having. But of course, not just myself, but I'm saying the persons of my caliber of skill, expertise, knowledge, experience, for as long as we are on the periphery, and in fact we are disregarded, the pain for ordinary people is unfortunately going to be multiplied.
Has government changed their ways? At the time when we were talking,
No, they haven't.
We didn't have a minister of electricity, for example.
Yes, and it's not warranted.
It's still not a necessary portfolio.
Not at all.
It has changed slightly with the new government. Like it's now, is it energy and
It's an abracadabra approach to a very serious matter. But what we must welcome is that this particular minister is not as does not have the penchant of unlawful interference as Pravin Gordhan was.
Okay.
Pravin Gordhan was very disastrous. And it's not because now he's not in the scene that we say this. I stated this openly over years, that he was the most disastrous minister. He unlawfully interfered in the due operation, due governance of state-owned companies to the point of bringing them to the brink of total collapse and bankruptcy. And Eskom is no difference, by the way.
Use Eskom as an example.
Yeah.
What tell us about what you think Pravin did at Eskom when he was leading that ministry.
I mean, he started when he was at Treasury, where he now wanted the right to determine who Eskom could buy coal from. And I'm on record. I did one of the interviews where I said that, I mean, those people there, they wouldn't know, they don't even know how to spell the word coal. But here they were trying to make decisions on buying coal for Eskom. It's insanity, to say the least. Why do you employ people? And what does it say of governance? But there was so many incidences of unlawful interference by Pravin Gordhan, to the extent that the seemingly incapacitation of the president to have removed him at the time he should have removed him. I think the cost to this economy is unquantifiable, but it is high in the extreme, because it's not just the monetary value, but is the cost to the economy in terms of even opportunity cost. We are here in a country that is not even able to grow by the 5 or 6%, which the National Development Plan, so stipulated that it was the desired outcome for the economy to grow by 5 to 6% if we are to defeat the triple evil of unemployment, inequality, and poverty. Of course, we didn't do that. So Pravin Gordhan was disastrous. But here, let's look at what happened. Towards the end, the 2024 elections were helpful in many ways, because it marked the exit of Pravin Gordhan, and towards the in the dying days of his tenure as a minister, and being under pressure from all quarters, we saw him now being less interfering, unlawfully, I state, in the due running of Eskom. And lo and behold, what I had stated, and many highly regarded analysts were doubtful of what I was asserting, that within 90 days, I understand Eskom, I understand the electricity system, I understand the business of electricity, I understand the engineering of a utility. So I was not just, dreaming up the 90 days that load shedding could be ended. And lo and behold, here we are now. We are now 4 months without any load shedding. And I did assert when they now got it right, I said that load shedding is a thing of the past, never to return.
So you still maintain that?
No, there's going to be no load shedding again. It's gone.
How did, in your observation, how did they solve it?
They did what we've said that they should do. That is on the Eskom generation side. Return to the basics. Stick to the knitting. And the basics are that Eskom, from inception, was built as a base load power generating company. What do I mean by base load? It just simply means that electricity that is reliably dispatchable on demand. When you need electricity, you must be able to get it because it is available, being generated. Eskom was built to be as such. It is not, therefore, no surprising that Eskom runs one of the most extensive and very complex grids in the world, high voltage grid, that sometimes, of course, if you're an untrained eye, you can just drive past a pylon and not fully appreciate the complexity that goes with transportation of electricity over that high voltage power line. But we have over 33,000 kilometers of a transmission grid in this country. And I did write that one of the fundamentally erroneous decisions that the Eskom board has taken was to agree to do the so-called unbundling of Eskom, meaning take out the national or create an entity called the National Transmission Company of South Africa. It was wrong from day one. In the 1998 white paper on Eskom, on electricity, it was a non-starter. It was a foolish idea, to say the least. It remains so even to this day.
It's still in conversation even now.
No, they've from the 1st of July, that company has been in operation. But look, you are asking a very legitimate question. Is there no difference that we have a Minister of Electricity? I'm saying no, the Minister of Electricity is not required. Because electricity is within energy. Remember, when you talk about energy, electricity is one component of energy. So I don't understand why you would say I got the Minister of Energy and Electricity. That itself is an oxymoron, and
They brought it under one now, I think.
Well,
one
you
thing.
could have just said Minister of Energy
and left it at that.
Yes.
I guess you have to understand the power of branding as well in this case, where we've been dealing with electricity for so long as an issue, and now to have a minister that answers directly to this one issue, so we know exactly who to point to. And I think based on what we've seen, he's done a stellar job of at least keeping us up to date as to what's happening.
Eskom has got spokespersons. so it means that it means that the Eskom spokespersons are on the Eskom payroll, but they are unemployed.
Because the minister is doing their job.
Of course.
Okay. But we've done well, though. This is a good story, right? The end of load shedding.
Load shedding was never warranted from day one. So I'm not excited that load shedding has ended, because I stated this. Load shedding was never warranted from day one. We should never have been in a load shedding environment. So I don't see why we. However, well, it's okay. But let me now paint a picture to you. We are here today. So as a result of the various discussions we've had, National Treasury then conjured up an idea that they should bail out Eskom to the tune of 254 billion rand. Because we were warning that Eskom was insolvent. So they bailed them out. And in fact, that 254 billion rand was not warranted in that it incentivized ineptitude and lack of prudence in the financial stewardship of Eskom. But okay, they've got 254 billion rand bailout. Now they are able to run, but now they are wanting to go out to the market and borrow even more money to the tune of 400 billion rand. They want to borrow 400 billion rand to construct a 14,000 kilometer transmission grid to connect electricity that is not suitable to be on the grid.
Tell us more. Why is it not suitable?
Well, it's a established scientific fact that a high voltage grid cannot transmit intermittent energy. It requires base load energy.
Consistent.
Non-stop.
Yeah.
That means that you have to run. So the electricity, have to oscillate. That's why we say reticulation. Oscillate 50 times per second or 3,000 times per minute. So you can't run 51 or 49. You must run 50.
That's the consistency you're talking
about. Yes. So in order to balance, when you've got a intermittent, meaning it's not constant and you have no control, because you have no control as to the wind speeds at any point in time when you've got a wind turbine or when the sun goes down. Well, how are you going to power up? Because your source of power is through a solar panel that draws the energy and harnesses the energy from the sun when the sun is not there. So what do you do with that power line?
When there's no power.
Yeah.
Have we invested in storage of power? Is that option ever crossed?
No, it's a non-starter. We've known this for years. Remember, everything, the question of electricity, what is appropriate, was answered by the year 1943. 1943.
National Party government.
Yeah, National Party. The Nationalist Party came to power in 1948. When the great industrialist, Dr. Hendrik van der Bijl, the man who started Eskom, Iron and Steel Corporation of South Africa, who, as an honorarium, there's a street from Megawatt Park or a road called Van der Bijl Drive. There is a town named after him in the Vaal called Van der Bijl. And, a great industrialist, a very sharp mind. By that time already, we had it was a global best practice as to what to do to achieve energy security for a nation. There was nothing. There's nothing new that we could be told. Now the problem you have is that today you have got a lot of people who can't even spell the word electricity making decisions, policy decisions on a very serious matter that can determine the fate of an economy, whether to grow or to be in a state of arrested development. And unfortunately, that's what we are sitting with. I'm saying where we are today, we should have, and if we hadn't, I am calling that we immediately formulate an electricity policy for this country that is anchored in 3 pillars. The first pillar is the pillar of reliably dispatchable power on demand, available as and when you need it. The second pillar must be a pillar of the least cost, that it must be the cheapest electricity because all the resources to generate electricity are available in this country and we have them in abundance and we will have them in abundance for the next 200 years at least. The third pillar is that of environmental sustainability, not climate change, environment. There's a difference. But I'm saying that is what we must do as a nation if we are serious about development, if we are serious about the constitution of this country, which prescribes and obligates that at least 13 sections in Chapter 2 of the Constitution, which are reliant on electricity, must be given effect to. And the issue of the environment. And what do I mean by environment? There is so many people in this country that don't have access to cheap electricity. So the quality of their life is impaired. They spend a great deal of time finding alternative energy sources. They will either use cow dung, which they dry up and then use it as fuel. It's got arsenic fumes that cause respiratory illnesses. They'll either use coal. Now, there are differences of coal, but the coal that is used now in all the coal yards that they use in Mbaula, they're using bituminous coal and not the domestic heating coal called anthracite. So bituminous coal is what you'll find, whether you go to Lephalale or the Waterberg, or you go to Mpumalanga, that's the coal that you find. That coal is not suitable for domestic heating. And it's a coal that is being used. And it's a coal that is now even being used when you go to Chisanyama. They're using that coal.
Yeah.
And the fumes that come out of there, the sulfur, the nitrogen oxides that dissolve there, the carbon dioxide, the carbon monoxide, that it is a horror story on the health of persons. So no one should be forced to have to use those. No one should be forced to use wood that is not suitable. So we also got a problem now environmentally and ecologically, a problem of deforestation, because people have to try and find. So it is unforgivable that in this country, with a 33,000 kilometer network of transmission, with over 400,000 kilometers of a distribution grid, meaning the last mile, when electricity can reach your home, people should not have electricity and should try and find alternatives. So what should have been done? I would have expected Eskom, the board of Eskom and the management of Eskom, to have welcomed with both hands the 254 billion rand bailout, then to have embarked on the most responsible action, whereof they must reduce the cost of running Eskom. On this one, I'm telling you now, based on Eskom's numbers, they are right now incurring over 80 billion rand a year in fruitless and wasteful expenditure.
But
so what does
through auditing, have they managed to improve that, or it gets worse every time?
No, it's getting worse. But what is a shocker is the fact that the management of Eskom doesn't seem to be alive to this.
Is it in a form of corruption or just a lack of knowledge how to use the money?
Well, they've signed certain agreements that compel them to have to spend that money, and they're not terminating those agreements. The constitution of the country, Section 217, which compels Eskom to have to apply, because Eskom is a state-owned company. If they had applied Section 217, there is no way that Eskom would have ever signed one single independent power producer power purchase agreement. Never. It is not possible, because Eskom produces electricity at no more than 46 cents now from coal, 46 cents a kilowatt hour. They are producing electricity from nuclear at no more than 11 cents a kilowatt hour. The question that therefore must be asked, a legitimate question, is who in their right mind, understanding company law, understanding the Eskom Conversion Act, understanding the constitution of this republic, understanding Public Finance Management Act, and understanding that they are bound to have to apply this set of laws, how on earth can anyone go, politicians that have demanded that Eskom must sign the power purchase agreement with the so-called independent power producers from wind and solar specifically, that are costing no less than 6.5 times more than it costs Eskom to produce exactly the same kilowatt hour of electricity. And worse is that 100% of that electricity is redundant. It is not usable by anyone in this country. And what manner of corporate governance and corporate ethics has this country come to, whereby you can have supposedly respectable business leaders who see nothing wrong with charging and receiving money for absolutely zero benefit, and not even appreciating the impact that zero benefit, where they're getting money for, it has resulted in energy poverty in this country, whereby electricity might now be available as it was supposed to have always been available, except that it is out of reach of ordinary people, including now that even businesses, the cost of doing business in this country has skyrocketed to such a level. And then you can have these so-called corporate titans that want to parade themselves as the paragons of virtue in as far as corporate governance, in terms of business ethics and everything else, that they knowingly receive billions every year from Eskom, and yet they deliver absolutely zero. But what is worse is that you can have the politicians. Just 2 weeks ago, you have Dr. Hosien Suramkhupa making a pronouncement that we are going to procure 5,000 megawatts of renewable energy. I mean, he says that, look, I'm an engineer, which we give to him. But no engineer can say that. It is not possible. Years ago, I remember I was talking to people at Eskom who are grid engineers, grid design engineers. And there was a talk which under President Zuma was still the president, just towards the end of his tenure. This country, the Ministry of Energy spent over 200 million rand to produce a feasibility report to procure energy from the Grand Inga Dam in the DRC. So I listened to the then chairman of Eskom at a conference where I was speaking, he was speaking, making a big pronouncement that we are going to acquire 2,500 megawatts of power from the Grand Inga Dam. In the first instance, I mean, you got people talking absolute nonsense, say that the Grand Inga Dam can power the whole of Africa. It's an absurdity. I don't know why people cartoon themselves by saying such things, because it is not possible on various fronts. But also it is not possible for this country to be able to procure. I asked a simple question to the people at Eskom, who are the great engineers. How are you going to transmit that power from the DRC 4,000 kilometers away to come to South Africa?
To megawatt.
What can I see exactly how? Have you factored what your transmission losses are? Have you factored what the terrain? Have you factored the risk of guarding that line? What happens when, but also more importantly, what is going to be your ultimate cost of electricity that arrives here? And of course, they said at the time that they were not listened to, and then they were not listened to. So what are we saying? In 2008, the tariffs in this country were 40 cents a kilowatt hour, 40 cents a unit. You know, people at home, they know that. Giddy units. Yeah.
Units, yes.
So 40 cents a unit. Today, if you are a prepaid customer and you are paying no less than
4 rands?
About 4.54, 4.98 cents a kilowatt hour.
What has led to that drastic increase in the price?
Greed, incompetence, and just downright dishonesty.
Greed by who? This is government money.
No, it's not government money. It's your money. You and I are being stolen blind, and they know this. So,
but who's greedy?
What am I saying? If the tariffs were to have increased at the trajectory that was projected, today electricity tariffs in this country in the year 2024 should have been 1 rand 16 cents, excluding VAT, which means that you and I should have been paying 1 rand 37 cents when we include VAT per kilowatt hour or per unit. And it should have been a standardized tariff, not a tariff that varies. So what you pay is not the same as what your neighbor pays. Is not so. That is insanity, to say the least. So the lack of harmonization and standardization of the tariffs in this country has led us to this point. And also, you've got this, I would call them the corporate marauders, the thieves. You know, I've said this somewhere before, and I wasn't being personal, but I was very serious. Anyone who says that they can produce electricity and supply it on the grid from wind and solar you are dealing with a sophisticated crook and a thief.
But we seem to believe them.
We are to blame.
Yeah.
We are to blame for believing them.
And why is it that their story is so convincing, but you're not sold?
Because we don't hold the decision makers, whether the politicians or the Eskom people, we don't hold them before a tribunal and find them to be in dereliction of fiduciary duty and therefore face the harshest penalty. If we did that, if we held them responsible, and maybe that is the first thing that we need to do. We need to have a scheme of arrangement in this country whereby the politicians and these executives, indeed, in accordance, particularly for the executives and the board members, in accordance with company law, that they must be brought before a tribunal and to be declared delinquent directors, meaning that they should never ever serve as directors in anyone who signs a power purchase agreement of that nature. So today you've got the Eskom board that says we are going to spend 400 billion rand building 14,000 kilometers of it. You've got an Eskom board that never fully appreciated the conflict of interest in Jan Oberholzer, who was an executive, the chief operations officer at Eskom. Jan Oberholzer then contrived a scheme of building 8,000 kilometers of transmission grid so that it could connect to the renewable energy company or so-called independent power producer he knew he was going to join. So the old language that he threw a javelin. And Jan Oberholzer has never been held accountable, has never been actually criminally charged. And I'm saying that he must be criminally charged for what he did. And I am astonished that the company that he has since joined has enjoyed the fact that he's there now and, having done what it... I'm astonished that you would have another Brian Dames, who himself, joined a renewable energy company and never saw any, knowing full well that everything that they're doing, it only harms Eskom, it prejudices Eskom, and harms the economy of this country. So what am I saying? That we must hold the politicians. So the moment they insist, they must be the one that provide the guarantees. And then, of course, it won't work. So let's talk about the 400 billion rand they want to spend on the transmission grid. I've said it before, and I'm telling you now, they will never receive 1 rand of funding from anybody.
Why is it? The model doesn't compute.
Well, they won't be able to show the revenue, the cash flows that are going to service the debt that they're looking to raise. And this government does not have any more financial capacity to be able to take those foolish decisions like the 254 billion rand bailout that they gave to Eskom. Instead of demanding that Eskom must run efficiently and cut out the 80 billion rand a year in fruitless and wasteful expenditure, they thought, no, let's throw 254 billion rand towards them. So those are some of the things that I think, if we fail as a nation to have to hold the politicians, to hold these board members of the state-owned companies, to hold the executives accountable, it then brings us to this situation we find ourselves whereby ordinary people are no longer able to afford electricity. Their dignity is impaired in an egregious manner. So the Constitution effectively is like a check that bounced. It's like a card that is declined when you try to pay, because all those promissory notes are no longer there. And when we have it within us, when you standardize and you have electricity at 1 rand 16 cents a kilowatt hour, you would have universal access, you would have the electricity within reach of everybody, because they would be able to afford it. And secondly, you would have businesses. The cost of doing business in this country would be lower. We would therefore have a real chance of being able to attract investment both by South Africans as well as any foreigners who would want to invest, particularly in the energy-intensive industries. One of the things let's not forget this for a moment. And I don't know if Minister Mandashe is aware. He presides on a portfolio of minerals. the mineral resources of this country in situ, in the ground, are valued at no less than 47 trillion rand. 2.5 trillion US dollar valuation of our resources, our natural resources, our minerals specifically. And I haven't heard him or the president speak about what is it that we are going to do to ensure that we can monetize, to be able to energize and grow the economy of this country so that we can create jobs. And one of the ways to be able to create the jobs, to ensure that those minerals, the 47 trillion rand worth of minerals, can really have a meaningful impact in the economy of this country, will be of ensuring that you've got available electricity 24/7 at the lowest cost possible ever. And the environmental friendliness aspect is to be able to optimize. So when you are burning a lump of coal to produce electricity, the point is the responsible strategy to implement is therefore to extract other elements within the coal, whether it's sulfur, because you need sulfuric acid to do many other things. Yeah. You need, carbon dioxide itself, by the way, it is a gas of life. Mm-hmm. You try and have no carbon dioxide, there will be no agriculture, therefore there will be no food security, there will be mass starvation. You need CO2 and, nitrogen, fertilizers. How are you going to make fertilizers if you don't have nitrogen? How are you going to, many other applications, industrial applications. So if you are able to then harness these elements from, coal or from the fossil fuels, as we are called, as we are told, will of course then be able to grow this economy. And that being the case, if you do it at the least cost, you are able to attract investment. You are able now to ensure that you can very efficiently. I mean, we sit in a country whereby we spoke about Dr. Hendrik van der Bijl, who founded Eskom. Today, there is no company called Eskom, and its successor company, I think ArcelorMittal, in the main, today they can't even make steel in this country. They can't produce crude steel. And the people who are producing crude steel and giving it to us, notwithstanding the abundant iron ore reserves that we have as a country, guess is who? Is the Chinese, is the Japanese, and even the Indians are now giving us steel products when we could have been producing crude steel and we could have been having a meaningful impact. But when you don't have electricity at the least cost, it is not possible to make any of this very, game-changing strategies in terms of your economy to be possible. So the question then would be, well, what is it that we can do? What can the people at home do? And what can businesses be able to do in order? Because what am I saying? My submission to you is the following. It was best described by Dr. Ben Carson in the United States, who said that we have been conditioned to think that politicians can bring about solutions to our problems. And we have never fully comprehended that, in fact, politicians are the source of the problems that we have. It was John F. Kennedy who said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask for what you can do for your country. So now we must ask a question as South Africans, whether it's businesses or just normal people. What is it that we can do for ourselves? Because the politicians are not going to do. We will continue to suffer heartache, as William Shakespeare put it, that the chief root of heartache is an unmet expectation. So if we have an expectation that any of these politicians, whether in the coalition, the grand coalition, will be able to bring about solutions, we are going to suffer heartache because we are going to be disappointed, as they will never be able to live up to that reality. And
what are our options? What are our options as ordinary South Africans?
Yes. So what are the options? So during that period of trying to plunder and pillage Eskom, and these politicians, together with the regulator who has effectively abandoned post, is in dereliction of duty. That is NERSA.
We'll come to them.
So during that period, they inadvertently liberalized and deregulated electricity generation.
Okay.
So when 3 years ago, you could not produce anything above 5 megawatts without a NERSA license. Today, you can produce any capacity for yourself. So if you are a home, all you need, a sizable home in a suburban area, meaning you've got a lot of appliances that all you need is you need 90 amps. So for every 10 amps is 1,200 watts.
Okay.
So that means that if I've got 90 amps, I might just say 90 amps, times 1,200 is going to give me the, but that is really a lot of electricity. Most homes can do with 7,600 watts. And then 7.6 kilowatts. And that is 60 amps. You can do with 60 amps. And so therefore, today, the cost of generating 60 amps is less than the cost of buying electricity from Eskom.
I can do it myself.
Yes, exactly. So more and more consumers are going off-grid. Now you have something foolish coming out of the government saying, we are going to levy a 10% tariff on solar panels. It's insanity. Actually, it is unconstitutional. Because if you are not able to provide electricity as you are obligated to provide electricity as the state, well, you can't then go and
punish.
Well, impede access to ordinary people, because to do so, you are infringing upon their constitutional rights. So that shouldn't be happening. But I'm just saying that today you can get electricity. Some homes will use no more than 40 amps of electricity at any point in time. And also what I see on the horizon and going to happen, and because I'm a player in this industry of energy overall, we are going to see more and more people resorting to gas, and specifically biogas. Okay. Biogas holds one of the biggest promises for this country, in that the manufacturing of biogas, and I underscore the word manufacturing, the manufacturing of biogas is labor intensive. At the same time, is environmentally friendly. And at the same time, is the least cost source of energy. Yeah. And therefore, and it also gives us energy on demand. So energy-intensive appliances such as water heating, stove for cooking, as well as warming your home. We are going to see now more appliances that are powered by biogas or liquefied petroleum gas, LP gas, and even compressed natural gas. At some point in time, we'll get to that. And therefore, using off-grid, meaning the solar panel on your roof, rooftop solar, with a battery, supplying you electricity for your all other appliances, and even a kettle for boiling water, you'll find that you're using gas. So we'll have then that, normally clueless analysts will talk about a thing called an energy mix. There is no such thing as an energy mix. Doesn't exist. Okay. Technically, there's no such, I can tell you now. But they speak about it as though, they cartoon themselves, but that's for them to, I think, continue. What am I saying is that you will see more people using a solar panel for certain appliances that are light current appliances in a home, and therefore heavy current appliances such as water heating and all that, they will use gas. And then you will see a breed of entrepreneurs, South Africans from all walks of life, of any race or color. They will now see the opportunity arising out of the deregulation and the liberalization of the electricity market, and now start businesses that are not only going to employ people, but are businesses that are going to be thriving on a scale for a simple reason, is that if you look at in the last 3 years, the energy or the electricity consumption per capita per year has moved from 3.2 megawatt hours to 2.7 megawatt hours. And that is declining even further.
Why is that?
Is declining even further because the tariff increases. Eskom has priced the economy of South Africa out of competitiveness scales. And as a result, we are seeing that decline, but also we are seeing a migration. Eskom has lost customer demand equivalent to 8,000 megawatts of electricity. They should have been selling and they are no longer able to sell that. That's why today they also talk about the fact that they have got excess capacity. And I'm stating that, yes, they've got excess capacity, not primarily due to the efficiencies in how they run the generating system, but also largely because of the customer exodus. This time is not led by Moses, that exodus. It's led by circumstances whereby people are so hard-pressed financially, they have to find different solutions. And that's, and others are just tired of being ripped off when they know or when they understand and comprehend what people like myself say, that there is 80 billion rand a year of fruitless and wasteful expenditure. There is 14 billion rand a year that is given to the electricity middleman. There is no reason whatsoever in this country for electricity to be sold through a middleman. And that is an additional 14 billion rand a year, again, of fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So once they realize that, they are compelled by circumstances to have to find alternative solutions. And as they find alternative solutions, the same apply to businesses. Now, there is when Minister Mlambo Ngcuka was the Minister of Energy, she then moved so that the pebble bed modular reactor, which is nuclear, could be trialed and designed, and eventually that program was closed in 2010, 2012, it was all done. Okay. So by 2010, I think as a country, we had already spent 12 billion rand in the research and development and design and even piloting of the pebble bed modular reactor technology. So they closed it. Some engineers proceeded to look what is called the small modular reactor for nuclear. And lo and behold, there's a breakthrough that in this country of South Africa, a country that is reputed globally for ingenuity, for advancement in the area of science, scientific development, there is a homegrown small modular reactor that can produce 35 megawatts of electricity. And at 35 megawatts of electricity, it means that you can deploy it on what is called a microgrid. Microgrid is where, so if you have a mining company, for example, that requires 20 megawatts or 30 megawatts, you can be able to then invest in that and generate electricity for yourself. You can invest in other technologies, which would include even coal, to produce energy for yourself. That in turn means that Eskom has got less and less and less customers to sell to. And the state, National Treasury, has run out of money to be able to keep on bailing out Eskom. And when Eskom embarks on foolish decisions such as to try and spend 400 billion rand building a 14,000 kilometer transmission grid, when the Minister of Electricity is making foolish pronouncements such as buying an additional 5,000 megawatts of intermittent, 100% useless, redundant electricity at a cost that is 6.5 times more, then you are inducing conditions of bankruptcy. You are inducing financial hardship on Eskom. So Eskom will not be able to survive in any case, notwithstanding the good work that has been done on the generation side. And I applaud Mr. Nxumalo, who's the head of Eskom Generation, for having re-energized, for having done that which we had been begging for years to be done. He has done. So I congratulate him for that. And I think he's done a great deal. As to whether his board and superiors really know what's happening, no, they don't, because their pronouncements and the decisions that they are since making, they are imperiling the very same organization that they are supposed to now be saving. So maybe this is temporary, but how can you have a Eskom that wants 36% tariff increase in the coming year? 36%. Inflation is under 6%. I think it's 5.4%. That's inflation. But they want 36%. And then they talk of really bizarre and upset concepts like we need a cost reflective tariff. What is a cost reflective tariff? When at the end of the day, you are the one who can be able to ensure is within your control, is within management's control, is within the board's control to ensure that they run a lean, efficient Eskom, which, by the way, not long ago, it was the fourth largest integrated utility in the world that was the least cost. Because when they got those awards, when Dr. Ruel Khoza was the chair of the board of Eskom, those were the glory days. And in those glory days, the cost of producing electricity from coal was no more than 11 cents. How can a country with 200 years of coal, the most astonishing thing is this. Today, so we sit here, technologically, you can run a coal-fired power station with zero emissions. Zero.
That technology exists.
Of course it exists. It has been in existence at least since 2012. I mean, you and I spoke about this before. I do work at the Energy Environment Foundation in India, and every year we bring in subject matter experts from all over the world. We review and analyze and critique all technologies that are in coal, oil and gas, fossil fuels, and see what is available. And we are driven by one thing. Electricity must be available because on this planet, there are 2.5 billion people that don't have access to electricity. It is criminal. It is unforgivable for that to be the case. So we are driven by that determination to say we have to find things that can be deployed on scale at the affordable. I think it was Professor Prahalad who wrote the book, Wealth at the Bottom of the Pyramid. So effectively, you need lowest prices on basic things, whether it is food, whether it is electricity, whether it is transportation,
shelter,
whether it's healthcare, whether it's shelter, whether it's education, even including safety and security. It must be at the least cost because by the virtue of the numbers, what do they teach us? The first week when you are in an economics class, the first week, if they don't teach you this in the first week, you are in the wrong class. You're not in an economics class. They teach you a principle. One of them is called economies of scale. Volume buys price. If I have got volume, I can bring down the price. So what am I saying? By simply applying economies of scale principle, Eskom can increase the electricity consumption per capita from the 2.7 megawatt hours to 3.8 megawatt hours. If you increase it to 3.8 megawatt hours, the economy of this country will grow by at least 3.4%. At 3.4%, it gives us a fighting chance. However, we need to then there must be a clear plan of how to get from 3.8 megawatt hours per capita electricity consumption to 5.5. At 5.5, you then achieve your goals that we have missed since 2014 of growing the economy by between 5 and 6%. You can grow by 6%. Of course, there are other things that you need to do. For example, you need to do what the apartheid nationalist party government did, between the years 1963 and 1976, the apartheid nationalist party government was spending 16% of the GDP on economic infrastructure, not social infrastructure, just on economic infrastructure. We need to get back to that. But I'm proposing that if we spend 8% of the GDP on economic infrastructure, and of course, then we have to still spend on social infrastructure and all other services, we can then grow this economy by the 6% august goal that we have set for ourselves. And we need to commit to consistently maintain that over a period of a decade, at least for 10 years, 6% growth. But it is, remember, economic growth is not a subject of a guesswork. Economic growth, you can determine and you can predict what your economy is going to grow by, what factor your economy will grow by in the next 10 years. And this has successfully been done. The sharpest, the economic minds, the economists over the years have been able to work this out. And one of them, of course, is that you can grow the economy predictably and you can maintain that trajectory. But you must have a plan that is reviewable annually, but a 5-year goal. The Japanese did that. The Chinese did that. It is no surprise at all that since the year 2020, since 2003 to now, 2020, more than 400 million Chinese people were taken out of. But China still remains one of the electricity-poor countries. It is therefore not surprising that every week, every so often, they are opening a power station that is coal-fired.
Like how you say every week, because the Chinese can do it every week.
No, because, see, there is the Toyota way, where you streamline and
your production.
Oh yes,
to
your
meet
processes.
Demand. Yes.
But it was Abraham Lincoln who said that if you gave me a forest and an axe to say, cut this forest within this period of time, I will spend more time sharpening the axe. I think something like 80% of the time I'll spend it sharpening the axe. That means that you must plan, because failure to plan is a plan for failure. So we just, we call it the National Development Plan, but it is not the National Development Plan. It's a statement of intent. We never, ever formulated and crafted plans that give effect to those august goals. But that's where we need to go as a country if we are to avert the catastrophe that is to come. And in the meantime, I'm saying we are going to see more and more people finding alternatives and entrepreneurs, new breeds of entrepreneurs coming up, particularly in the electricity space. And as they come up, they will then take leaf from Professor Prahalad's book, Wealth at the Bottom of the Pyramid, by ensuring that even a person who lives in a squatter camp is able to access energy
at an affordable
rate. And as they do so, then, of course, the economy will benefit. And then you will have businesses that are then looking at this breakthrough, technological innovations and inventions, such as the small modular reactor technology or nuclear, to say, wow, what can we do? We need baseload. We'll also look at burning coal to produce electricity with zero emissions. So therefore, the Paris Climate Accord, remember, it says that don't emit greenhouse gases, whether it's carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, sulfur and nitrogen oxides, don't emit those, the greenhouse gases. But it never said you cannot use coal. If I don't emit greenhouse gases,
I'm fine.
So what?
Yes.
And I'm saying we are missing a big opportunity, and Eskom itself is missing a big opportunity. I mean, they're talking things that at the end of the day are not bringing us to the point where we can have electricity that is reliably dispatchable on demand in the least cost manner in an environmentally friendlier way.
You spoke of discrimination. Some companies, smelters, that's the reference, that's the one you used earlier, are paying much, much less. And yet...
They don't pay anything. They pay 19 cents
Yes.
when it costs 46 cents to produce.
But the ordinary South African pays 4 rands.
4.54, 4.98 cents.
How did they get to that position? Are these
Corruption.
Okay. That's simple.
No.
Because this sounds like old contracts.
This country does not have a more distinct criminal class than corporate South Africa and the politicians.
So this is but isn't this a grand deal long?
These are so thoroughly corrupt persons that whenever you dare speak against them, then they make sure that the good that you say will not go unpunished.
Are these contractual deals between, say, a mine...
Unlawful contracts.
Unlawful?
Yes.
Are they not about legacy?
How can NERSA in good conscience approve a 19 cents? It's insanity.
Are these not apartheid legacy contracts?
No. They are done by our people now in democracy. How can you have a country that, for example, legalizes the international oil majors to collude against the provisions of the Competition Act? Then you give them 10 years, which in turn means that you exclude the very people you are trying to empower, which is the previously disadvantaged, to get into a sector of the economy that is critical. And then at the end of the 10 years, you, in a backroom deal, extend that exemption when they are not even investing, and in fact, they are divesting. And at the same time, gatekeeping and ensuring that they close out would-be entrepreneurs, new entrepreneurs, black and otherwise, who can't enter the space because you then used your power, abused your power as a politician to grant these companies exemption from the competition law, because if the competition law was to be applied, they would never have been able to do that. How do you then, when you know that you are a regulator and your mandate in terms of the constitution of this republic is that any procurement must be done so at the least cost, in an efficient manner, and at the end of the day without excluding particularly the previously disadvantaged, because we want to redress the imbalances of the past and we want to undo discrimination which is unlawful? How can you therefore in good conscience sit there and approve of a tariff application of that nature? How can you in good conscience, if you are parliament, sit there and say, well, National Treasury, you can indebt the people of this country for decades to come. Children, our great-grandchildren who are yet to be born, already they are being indebted. When I started writing and warning against the misapplication of the policy of deficit financing, the debt of this country was just 2.2 trillion. And I said, please, apply the brakes.
Stop.
No more. And in fact, reorganize yourself, because you can't have a country which is paying debt, servicing its debt at the same cost that is an individual. It's like we are borrowing from machonistas. I mean, it's an insanity. At 2.2 trillion, today, we are sitting in a country that is debt is over 5.1 trillion. Our debt servicing cost, this hour as I'm talking to you, by the end of this day, is 1,057 million.
Every day.
1,057 million every calendar day. And the Minister of Treasury or Finance, Minister Inoko Dongwana, in his past budget statement, budget speech, and there was applause. Can you believe? He was applauded for announcing that in 2025, our debt service costs will be 1.56 trillion rand a day.
Clearly, the applause was a misunderstanding.
So 1.56 billion rand a day. So 1,560,000,000 rand a day.
The cost of borrowing,
Yes.
of having a debt.
So you tell me, if we had that amount in this economy,
available for use,
what would this economy grow by if it went into the productive sectors of the economy? So when you hear about, I mean, even when they were justifying why they need the so-called GNU, which is a coalition, and I'm on record as having stated that the GNU is a case of terminological trickery, because that's what it is. But one of the things they justified was that, no, the markets demanded this so that there can be investment. There is no investment that is coming into this country except the bonds that the state issues. They are 100% of that money does not find its way into the economy. It finds its way to trying to pay the money lenders interest on the money that they lent to us years gone by. And if anything, we are digging a more and more deeper hole. So we misapply. The originator, the inventor of the policy, a fiscal policy intervention of deficit financing, is a famous English economist, John Maynard Keynes. But John Maynard Keynes himself had never purposed deficit financing as a fiscal policy tool to be permanent. It was a question of saying, when you have a gap, but there must be a clear line as to when you stop. When you continue, and then when you have got a monetary policy of a country that is flawed as ours is, applied and managed by the Reserve Bank, when you have a monetary policy of a country that is as flawed as what we have, you can't therefore be on steroids when you are misapplying deficit financing, because then the results are there for all to see. And hence I'm saying that even a Eskom, which we are talking about today, the state will soon no longer have the capacity to borrow money from anywhere, and therefore will not even be able to bail out any of these entities. Therefore, it has become a matter of survival for Eskom to have to run efficiently and to run in the cost-efficient manner, the least cost, so that it can once again reclaim its status as being the lowest cost utility in the world, and a Eskom that must remain integrated, a Eskom that must therefore grow into the region so that we can stabilize and grow not just our economy, but the economy of the whole region. And electricity is by far the necessary tool to be able to do that. Of course, there are others, including the capital markets, and we are not even having a discussion on how we are going to harness the capital markets so that we can be able to invest in this economy and forgo, as I say, having to go and borrow money from the money lenders who are effectively stealing us blind. And all of that, because it's not going to be done, I'm saying South Africans have no expectation as to what your government and the state-owned companies can do for you.
When we sit here today, the price is 36% likely to happen next year. And everything you've said speaks to how things should be done, but very little is happening.
Yes.
What is at the heart of this paralysis, this situation we find ourselves where we as consumers seem to be taking the blows, and we are happy to continue with this? We are losing the battle. We are unable to afford our lives. And yet our leaders, for some odd reason, seem not to be feeling our pain. What is at play here? What is it that makes this concoction of factors a reality, and no one seems to be stopping it?
The people of this country, by and large, had hope that was planted, the seed that was planted by none other than Nelson Mandela, that you have a government for the people, by the people, that will always act in your best interest, and that therefore even the Constitution that is giving you promissory notes to all the things that you should expect your government to do, and but provided no room for disappointment. So people are pretty much prisoners of hope. and they feel disempowered from being able to take any particular action. And therefore, you need a breed of leaders who have got the competence, who have got the gumption to come with new solutions, to be able to then galvanize and mobilize the people of this country in a particular direction. We need leaders. What we do not have in this country is leaders. And the politicians have taken advantage of that. The greedy, profiteering privateers have also taken advantage of that. They found that for them, because people have got a genuine, legitimate expectation for a government that will act in their best interest. Therefore, these greedy, profiteering privateers, they have by and large then found it necessary to bribe all the politicians. That is a tragedy that we have as a country, that the politicians. So you see, today, effectively, we should be asking a question of all the politicians, including ministers in cabinet. We should be saying, it was Robin Williams who said that, no, man, we need all the politicians to wear a jacket that tells us who sponsored them. Mm. So we should be asking them to wear jackets that says, well, who bribed you? Because it is inexplicable that they can be in a situation that they are in, they themselves seem powerless. They seem powerless. They are lethargic. They are not alive to the problems that are facing our nation. And I fear that in a short order of time, what we saw recently happen in Kenya will be multiplied by 100.
Are we on a, and you said it, I guess, are we on a ticking time bomb when it comes to electricity price? Do South Africans, they have been vocal over the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks, which is what probably led to this conversation. Are we there yet where South Africans are that hurtful?
Yes, they're not, okay, most of the default that you're seeing is because people are protesting. But you see, electricity is not like a phone or a satellite TV where I can switch you off and there is no infrastructure to vandalize.
And sacrifice. Oh, yes. And sacrifice.
So there was a time where I don't know how many service delivery protests we would have a day in this country, but there was at least more than 20, I think, at any point in time throughout the country. I see those are going to increase. That's why I'm making this serious clarion call. Drop the tariffs to R1.16, cut the wasteful expenditure, and once and for all, make sure that you run an operation, a company that is a pride of the people of this nation, is the least cost producer of electricity anywhere in the world, so that this economy can be able to grow. We can be able to avert and stop the planting of the seeds of unrest that are surely taking root. And once they become a forest, we will not have enough. Machinery to cut that seeds or that forest of unrest and that forest of instability. So I think my plea really is, in everything that we've spoken about, I would like South Africans to reduce this talk to one thing and one thing only. Electricity tariffs at R1.16 a kilowatt hour. That is a fight, that is a struggle, that is what we must demand, legitimately so. And my plea to the Eskom management, my plea to the Eskom board, to the politicians, particularly the Minister of Electricity, is that please stop and cancel all the decisions that you know. It's not that they don't know. They know that those decisions are catastrophic. Please just cancel those. Do for the first time in a long time what is in the best interest of the people of this country. Because what is in the best interest of the people of this country is actually for everybody's well-being. If we have a country that currently is, you have a country that has got more than 83 murders a day. You got more people dying than you got people dying in we've got a country that has got, I think the figure now is more than 20,000 people that every year die from our roads.
It's almost a war zone.
And some of the injuries, if people had access to healthcare, better healthcare, those injuries would save their lives. I mean, the treatment, those injuries would not lead to an end to their life. And we would not have a situation where there's insurance payouts of all manner, whereby even the road accident fund doesn't have. And we have a road accident fund that way levies us. So it has increased the cost of energy because petrol and diesel, which are subject to a road levy or road accident fund levy, and we are just seem to be throwing money into a bottomless pit. So these are all the things that have to be done. So my plea...
Water issues. You're forgetting another one that's brewing.
And there's no shortage of water. There was a minister, and I'm not going to name that minister. I said to this minister, I'm talking to the minister, I said, Minister, one of the things that you should do for your legacy is that Africa's largest freshwater lake is in the Kalahari Desert. Africa's largest freshwater lake is in the Kalahari Desert. Make sure that you harness that water. This, and I said, will define your legacy no different from how people like Dr. Hendrik van der Bijl's legacy was defined, because you would have done something that is in the best interest of humanity. Well, how can you sit in a country whereby we can't even do basics, dredging, the Vaal water? We've got what is called yellow equipment, dredging equipment. Some of the best dredging companies are in this country. We can't just dredge to make sure that the carrying capacity of the Vaal is sufficient to cater for the needs of a ever-growing population of Gauteng. We know that Gauteng province, smallest land mass, the largest population density than any other province in the country. And therefore, in order for urbanization, for civilized life to be possible in a dignified manner, you need not just electricity, you need water that is available. And you also need to be ensuring that as you now build very efficient, robust infrastructure to reticulate that water, you do it in a manner that can bring about a tonic, a much necessary tonic, because it is economic infrastructure which can only lead to economic growth if you spend. But they're not able to make a nexus, a connection with that. So that is one of the difficulties that we have. But yes, water also must be available to all. There should be no reason in this country, by the way, even if you look at the underground aquifers, there should be no reason for any village whatsoever. There was never any reason, even at one point in time. I mean, we said some very bizarre and downright stupid things like, we are going to get engineers from Cuba to help us with our water crisis, when they themselves can't even solve their own water crisis in Cuba. But we said, no, we are bringing them here. I mean, you wonder some of these decisions and you say, what manner of people are in that cabinet? What is the mindset? What is the nature of discussions? What is the nature of decision-making processes that that cabinet has, where they could sit there and say, yeah, that's reasonable. Let's go and... I mean, it's insanity. Whereas we are not having a coordinated, well-structured approach. At the end of the day, it has left people to fend for themselves when they're not supposed to be fending for themselves, because the Constitution has given them a promissory note. And unfortunately, people are now going to have to fend for themselves in what I've spoken about in terms of energy provision, energy security, access to energy, that they are going to find alternatives. As they find alternatives, that itself means that Eskom ceases to exist as a viable. It becomes insolvent because there'll be no money from the government. Therefore, do what I'm saying you must do. If you don't know, Eskom people, if you do not know how please, I am available
Call
to
me.
help you to bring the electricity tariffs to R1.16, to bring your cost, your all-in cost, to 87 cents a kilowatt hour. I am available. I'm availing my services as a patriot, as a citizen of this country. This, do not fail. Minister Hossein Soramokgopa, do what I'm saying must be done. Demand and instruct. If ever there was a time where interference is allowed, is now.
I
And
will
it will
ask,
not be interference, it will be intervention, a much needed intervention.
I will ask him to come here and I'll bring you with.
I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to have that discussion, I think. And not only have a discussion for the sake of a debate, but to say, let us now realize the gravity of the moment and find the necessary solutions that this country needs. I mean, I could work anywhere in the world. On this planet, I could work anywhere else. In this country, I'm not able to do any work because of what I've spoken about, where there is contempt for my skill, for my knowledge, for my expertise. And some of it is driven by what I would term hateful envy. I can't do anything about it. But I can work anywhere in the world. And for other reasons, I'm still here. So therefore, whilst I'm here, I sit there and I lose sleep at night. And hence I would agree to making my contribution in a form such as this.
True.
Of having this conversation where we talk to the nation, where we say to the nation, this is... and the question becomes, for how long? Because I also have to think, to say, but am I really... could I be of... could I be of more benefit to other nations than my own? And I'm not the only one. I mean, was it 2023? I think there were more than 25,000 South Africans who left. Some of them joined the ANC, which means Australia, New Zealand, Canada.
Thank you, Dr. Kgadima. We truly appreciate it. It's always a pleasure hanging out with you. These are master classes, and hopefully very soon I will get the Minister of Electricity. I'll ask him to bring the CEO of Eskom.
Even better.
Imagine that round table.
Yeah, I like your proposal.
Imagine that round table.
I pray that they will accept it, and
I'll start working on it immediately.
Yeah, for the best interest of the people of this country.
Yeah,
I welcome that.
Let us just, put these things on the table and say, when the price of a product goes up, naturally, its demand will go down. It's price elasticity. It's a basic principle. However, for some reason, we seem trapped as South Africans, where this price of this damn thing is going up and we don't even know what to do with it. We are paralyzed by it. And yet there's some whose role is to slow it down, to reduce it to our affordability. But they don't seem to be doing that. So
the minister can. I'm happy to have that discussion with him.
Yeah.
The Eskom CEO can bring down. But I hope that before we even have that round table, they will make an announcement that he's abandoning the plan to apply for 36%. In fact, I'm hoping that before we even have that round table, he will make a very bold, progressive pronouncement that the price of electricity henceforth will drop down to R1.16 and will be standardized. There will be no more unlawful discrimination of South Africans, particularly the indigent, who are made to pay more, subsidizing the rich corporate titans who are paying less than even the cost of producing electricity for electricity. They effectively are, that's just rampant theft. So I'm praying, I remain a prisoner of hope that through this discourse, they will be able to heed some of the advice and the requests and the proposals that we are advancing. And yes, save South Africa. If there was ever a time where Save South Africa mantra has got relevance, it's now, with electricity tariffs dropping, because once you drop the price of electricity, everything else will fall in place.
You're opening up a lot of opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And then there's enough capital even to go into the investment. in responsible economic, productive sectors of the economy.
We seem to have adopted, as a nation and businesses in particular, the attitude that says the consumers will pay for it. It happens in a lot of sectors where we seem to pass on the final cost to the average person in the streets.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because South Africans are generally poor.
King David, I must address you appropriately. King David, I never fully appreciated and understood the value and the benefit of doing comprehension testing at school, at elementary school, primary school, until now. So, yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I don't have a better way of putting it than most of the people that make decisions, that are given power to make decisions. It is evident that they did not pass comprehension test at school. Hence, they can make very far-reaching decisions that are to the detriment of the people of this nation, when they're supposed to have fully comprehended and understood, so that they can properly apply policies and make decisions that are for the best interest of the people of this country, and they don't. So let us be prisoners of hope, but not passive prisoners of hope. Let us be activist prisoners of hope, meaning we must do something. Let us not just throw our hands up in the air in despair and say, well, what can we do? There is something that every one of us can do. And if Eskom does not abandon the 36% planned tariff increase application, we must force their hand into abandoning that. And also we must force their hand with reduction of the tariffs. And Parliament must take the necessary measures to prevent National Treasury from continuing with the bailouts, including provision of financial guarantees to the so-called independent power producers. There was never any consultation, and yet Treasury has used our money to gift to these privateers. To what good end? To our detriment. So I'm saying, let us be activist prisoners of hope. That as hopeful as we are, we must fully understand what Thomas Jefferson said, that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Let us not take it in good faith that those that we have elected to positions of power and authority, those that we have appointed to these critical state institutions, will always act in a bona fide manner, in good faith, and that they will execute their duties as required by the oath of office they would have taken. Let us be aware that they have been prone to being tempted, and if anything, over the last 30 years, they have perfected their methods of concealment of their crimes. It's a tragedy.
On that note, thank you so much, Kgadima. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you very much.
And thanks for sacrificing your holiday for this. It looks like a normal working day for you today, jacket and all.
It is a normal working day.
Yeah.
But thank you once again for the opportunity. And as they say in Swahili, asante sana.
Asante sana. It's there somewhere. I have Swahili on my table somewhere.
Yes, you would say karibu.
Karibu.
Yes.
Thank you.
King David Studio Podcast.